end is where you show your love. You clap as hard as you can. So let's practice one more time. Clap hard. A little bit louder. Clap harder. Thank you. We are so excited about this. This is the second TEDx Wiley University experience, and so we are glad that we are able to bring this to you. The students, myself, Dr. Lopez Coleman, and others have worked incredibly hard to make this happen, and so we are excited. Everybody ready? So what's going to happen now is that we're going to queue up, and our first speaker will come on. You'll hear a voice from above. That's what I've been calling it, the voice from above. And that person's going to share a little bit about the person that's speaking. And then after that, the person will come on and speak, and we'll go into that session until we have a break. The break is about 3 minutes. If you need to readjust, run out the door very quickly, and then we'll bring the house lights back down. That tells you that we are starting, and we're back at it again. Everybody got it? All right, so let's have some fun tonight. All right, welcome.
JoAnn Dansby is a graduating senior originally from Phoenix, Arizona. During her time spent at Wiley University, she has accomplished leadership roles in each of the 6 pillars that Wiley prides itself off of: leaders, activists, scholars, debaters, athletes, and vocalists. As a 4-time President's List honoree, she maintains a high GPA while still being heavily involved on campus with multiple leadership roles under her belt. Within her 3.5-year span on the hallowed grounds of Wiley University, JoAnn has worn many hats. Her titles include, but are not limited to, the 11th consecutive Miss National UNCF, co-captain of the Great Debaters, Red River Athletics Champion of Character, Miss Choir, and the sole ambassador for the Propel Center on campus. Through her roles, she has traveled around the country speaking and interacting with men, women, and children, spreading the same inspiration Wiley gave her. She lives by the quote, "Be the change you want to see," and hopes to leave a legacy built on kindness. Please welcome Miss JoAnn Dansby to the stage.
For those who may or may not know me, I am JoAnn Dansby. I am a former mass communication major, great debater, choir member, queen, representative, and most recently, a graduate of the wonderful Wiley University. I like to tell people that I speak in quotes. Many of you know that I live by the motto, "Be the change you wish to see." But what you don't know is that it's a quote from Gandhi, which is derivative of the former one, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." I speak in quotes because history tends to repeat itself, and quotes serve as a blueprint from those who have persevered through adversity. I adopted that quote in 2019, but it wasn't until I walked these hallowed grounds that I actually put them into action. I need everyone in this room to understand that you possess the qualities of leaders, activists, and change makers. I believe there's some leaders in here. Scratch that. I know there's some leaders in here. I believe every single person in here is destined for greatness. The question is, do you believe it yourself? Because whether you know it or not, history has its eyes on you. Hamilton, 2015. In reference to the topic of transcendent leadership, I, JoAnn Dansby, will focus on the action of acting and how it is contagious, but only to those who operate from true humility and fearlessness. For a second, I want you to close your eyes and envision the bone-shaking fear that took over Harriet Tubman's body when she made her first escape. Imagine her barely being able to see her own hand in front of herself and having to rely on the moon because streetlights did not exist. Imagine being hunted by flesh-starved dogs who saw her as nothing more than a meal. Lastly, imagine the feeling of victory when she realized she had made it and did it 13 more times. To paraphrase, the definition of the word transcend means to go beyond or to surpass. This includes time, trends, eras, etc. But when paired with leadership, essentially what is being said is that you and what you stand for possess the ability to impact the masses across generations, years, countries, ethnicities, and more. But what qualifies a person to reach that level? It's not status or a state of mind. The answer is humility and integrity. When we think of transcendent leaders, those who have broken the barrier, we think of legends of the likes of Martin Luther King Jr., Heman Sweat, and Nelson Mandela. These men knew that if you are complicit in the wrongdoings of others, you are part of the problem. These men, along with many others, knew that they were entitled to human rights, equal rights, universal rights. It's ridiculous, right? These men were so moved by their entitlement, this burning rage of injustice and bigotry, they did something you have the power to do also, something so simple yet monumental. They became the change they want to see. You cannot be a good leader if you are not a good person. Let me restate. You cannot be a good leader if you are not a good person. Dr. Tasha Carson, 2024. I will take it a step further and said you shouldn't be a good leader if you're not a good person, because in the wise words of Miss Lauryn Hill, how are you going to win if you ain't right within? I get it. We're human. We make mistakes. But there is an ethical necessity required of those who wish to leave a legacy of honor. You are required to lead by example, even if you hit rock bottom. But the wonderful thing about rock bottom that nobody seems to talk about is that the only way you can go from there is up, forcing you to remember that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. To transcend the boundaries of time, your impact must be lasting. What makes transcendent leadership transcendent is the variable of selflessness. It's about service, not self-service. In fact, your greatest ability may come from the part where you're able to relate to others. One must be empathetic because transcendent leadership is not about the power or personal gain. And get this, you're referred to as a leader because eventually people will follow. Collectively making an impact because people will forget what you've said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou, 1995. There's this large misconception that those who have achieved the status of transcendent leadership are somehow special or they were specifically destined for that role. And as whimsical and magical as that may sound, that cannot be further from the truth. These men and women possess the same biological characteristics that you and I are made up of. The only thing that separates you from them is the fact that they acted. This trait lives in you too. You just need to activate it. Do you do the right thing when nobody is looking? How badly do you want change? How much empathy for others do you possess? Because if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Malcolm X, 1964. So what's stopping you from becoming transcendent? There is a very thin line that separates you and the people I've been quoting, and the difference is the action. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Martin Luther King Jr., 1968. If you make the simple decision to align your actions with your values, you can possess the ability to catalyze lasting change on the world around you. Anchor yourself in the belief that a better world is possible, and it will happen. You have to quite literally be the change you wish to see, because it always seems impossible until it's done. Nelson Mandela, 1995. Thank you.
round of applause, please. So we have about 2 more minutes on our break. Thank you.
Jr., and Braylon. He has been graced to accumulate over 20 years of pastoral, ministerial, leadership, and public speaking experience in various vocational and social contexts. This includes 5 years of higher education administration and adjunct instruction. He has earned a Bachelor of Arts in Leadership Studies from Beulah Heights University, a Master of Arts in Religious Studies from East Texas Baptist University, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from Perkins School of Theology at SMU. Dr. Lacey is a proud member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and he currently serves as the Director of Online Engagement and Retention at Wiley University. Please welcome Dr. Brandon Lacey to the stage.
Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. This is what an angel says to Joseph after Joseph's new and supposedly virgin fiance comes home from a vacation at her cousin's house. When this supposedly virgin fiance comes home, she comes home 3 months pregnant. Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. Have you ever thought about what God is really asking Joseph to do? Now, as you think about it, please don't think about it from the theological perspective, or don't think about it as a pastor would think about it or a Sunday school teacher would think about it. Don't think about the Immaculate Conception and the veneration of Mary and all of those theological concepts, we understand. But I promise you, as a father of three, none of that would have made sense to Joseph. And yet, as embarrassed as Joseph is to have his supposed virgin fiancée come home 3 months pregnant, God asked Joseph to stay. Never mind the fact that even when Mary is asked, who is the father, Mary has the audacity to look at Joseph with a straight face and say, God. I don't know how many men, fathers would have accepted that answer, but you can't be upset with Joseph wanting to leave. Yet God asks Joseph to stay. You want to know what God is asking Joseph to do? God is asking Joseph to be a leader. But he's not asking Joseph to be the 21st century westernized American individualist concept of leadership. He's asking Joseph to be a transcendent leader. He's asking Joseph not to be the leader that Joseph wants to be, but he's asking Joseph to be the leader that Mary and Jesus need him to be. Because oftentimes, leadership calls us into contexts that doesn't match our convenience, our consideration, nor our comfort. But it actually does the exact opposite and calls us into inconvenience, discomfort, and inconsideration. It's the type of leadership that Paul talks about in Romans 15, where he says, the strong shall bear the infirmities of the weak. It's the type of leadership that Jesus instills in his disciples when he tells them that the greatest among you must first become the servant. Transcendent leaders are leaders who understand that sometimes we are asked to take the lead in the story while simultaneously not being the star of the show. It's the type of leadership that says the story can't even happen without us, yet the story never becomes about us. How many of us can handle that type of leadership? Leaders who grasp this concept of leadership, they don't need followers for themselves to feel important. They need followers to feel important. Now, I know on the surface what I just said sounds the same, but when you really think about it, one of these things is really not like the other one. You see, leaders who need followers for themselves to feel important, these are individuals who are very dangerous when it comes to leadership. They border the boundary of narcissism, autocracy, and many other dangerous nomenclatures that we can use to identify those who have an abusive leadership. But leaders who simply need followers to feel important understand that transcendent leadership and the scope of it precedes prosperity in the full magnitude of what they have to gain from the leadership context, because their perspective is about making those who follow them feel more important than themselves. I want you to take a moment and think about some of your greatest Jesus stories. Take a moment. Think about your favorite miracle, your favorite Sunday school story about Jesus. Many of you may be thinking about when he fed 5,000 with 2 fish and 5 loaves. Many of you may be thinking about the numerous blind people that came to him for healing and they left with sight restored. Many of you may be thinking about the number of deaf individuals who came to him, but they left with their capacity to hear. And many of you may have already skipped all the way to the cross and the empty tomb and begin to celebrate the miracle of the resurrection itself. Now, whatever miracle we're celebrating and we're thinking about right now, realize that as grand as these miracles are, none of them happen if Joseph is not that type of leader. I mean, who else was going to lead Mary from Nazareth to Bethlehem in order to fulfill the prophecy that was spoken about the Messiah by Micah over 2,000 years prior? Who else was going to help Mary and Jesus hide in Egypt from Herod and his murderous rampage because he's now jealous that a new king of the Jews has been born. It was Joseph. The 5,000 don't happen without Joseph. The resurrection doesn't happen without Joseph. The woman with the issue of blood never gets her healing if Joseph is not the type of leader that realizes that even though the story doesn't happen without me, the story is never about me. Now, this does not suggest that leadership is all about indentured servitude, where I use my talents, I use my gifts, and all of the other blessings that God has bestowed upon me, and I never get anything in return. No, we're not suggesting that there is no remuneration when it comes down to leadership, because every individual who uses what they have to offer to enhance and enrich the life of another person should experience the harvest, sowing and reaping, productivity and prosperity, whatever other nomenclature we want to use to fill in those gaps. But what we are suggesting is that I should not look to be blessed if I have not first been a blessing, especially to those who come into my context with the need. I'll leave you with the question: whose life story changed for the worse because of your unnecessary need to feel important? And whose life story changes for the better because you realize that I don't have to be the star in order for me to take the lead? Thank you.
Dr. Pamela Hill serves Wiley University as Chair of Interdisciplinary Studies in the School of Education and Sciences. She is originally from Muskogee, Oklahoma, and is a proud graduate of Langston University, Oklahoma's only HBCU. She earned a master's degree from Northeastern State University in college teaching and a PhD in higher and adult education from the University of Missouri-Columbia. She is a lifelong learner and Afrocentric educator with over 30 years of experience in higher education. She is a student development practitioner as well as a classroom instructor, having served as a resident hall director, coordinator of a TRIO program, assistant dean of students, director of multicultural affairs, and assistant vice president for student affairs. Additionally, she has taught graduate and undergraduate level for the last 25 years. As a transcendental leader herself, Dr. Hill steps outside of the boundaries others set and demonstrates this leadership mentality in the classroom. She asserts that she pushes her students to do the same, to dig deep and dig deeper. As a result, she has witnessed her students move from being intimidated to being confident as transcendental leaders. Please welcome Dr. Pamela Hill to the stage.
Good evening, family. What does leadership mean to you? We've been taught that leadership is about power, about control over others, even about being a dictator. But let's talk about transcendent leadership. You know what that is, right? It's the desire to serve others. It's not about self, it's not about ego, but it's rooted in the communal values such as unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, creativity, purpose, and faith. It's about lifting as we climb, speaking truth to power, and leaving a legacy that empowers the next generation. It's about the power of resilience, the ability to bounce back, to rise when life knocks us down, to move forward, even when the odds are stacked against us. It's turning every no into motivation to keep going. It's surviving and it's thriving. Now, having a position or a title doesn't necessarily make you an impactful leader. Sometimes we are just born naturally to lead. And we find out by accident because people always look to us for advice. To be a strong leader, you have to care about others. You have to be unselfish in your actions, and you have to want others around you to be successful. Now, our ancestors demonstrated the power of resilience. Think about it. Ancestors born into enslavement and broke those chains and came out of enslavement, came off the plantations, and did phenomenal things. They built institutions. Wiley University, that has stood the test of time for over 152 years, and we are still here because of those ancestors. It turns power into what it should be. Oppression into opportunity, pain into progress, and struggle into strength. Now, you may wonder what makes a transcendent leader. There are 3 areas I think are important for us to understand. First, you collaborate boldly. You do not see other people's strengths as a threat or their brilliance as something that you should be afraid of. Instead, you see it as an opportunity to build collaborations. You advocate fiercely, meaning you speak up for those whose voices may have been dimmed, may have been silent, overlooked. And you build with purpose, knowing that the work that you do is much larger than yourself, because you build for the future. You begin in the present and you move forward. A couple of examples of transcendent leaders. This week we are celebrating the life of Martin Luther King Jr. Some call him a dreamer. I call him a revolutionary warrior who sacrificed his life, who worked fiercely to make an impact and to speak up for the civil rights of others to fight. Harriet Tubman, who boldly escaped enslavement, but her heart said, go back and free others. She risked her life. I want to share with you 3 African proverbs that I hold close to my heart, that I think are important to help you lead purposefully. I always say, closed mouths don't get fed. Ask for what you want. We worry about being rejected. Oh, what if they say no? But what if they say yes? And say, come on in and have a seat and tell me about your ideas. No one will open the door if you don't knock. The second proverb, you must learn to eat the elephant one bite at a time. Sometimes we do too much. We get overwhelmed. We get frustrated. We got to stop doing the most and don't bite off more than we can chew. Sometimes we are overachievers and we want to keep doing and doing. We don't have to rush. Don't allow challenges to overwhelm you. Don't forget to pause, breathe, and take your time. And remember that proper planning prevents poor performances. Lastly, I am because we are. We are because I am, which reminds us the strength of working together, that we are stronger together. We can achieve more together than we can alone. I try to live by those proverbs. And I hope that you have something that you attempt to live through as well. Now, what is it that we can do to make an impact? I want you to understand, to know, and to realize that we are here because of the sacrifices of those who came before us, those who knocked down those walls so that we can see, so we can move forward. Never forget that. I want you to know that we are here because of the work that you put in, despite the obstacles, Despite the obstacles, you are still here. And finally, you and we are here because we are meant to be, we are supposed to be. Despite the naysayers and the haters, let's shake them off. Sometimes people who love you will doubt you and discourage you. Maybe because someone in their past doubted and discouraged them. But I encourage you to always speak up, to step forward, to build together, and never, never stop moving forward. Move with purpose. Lead with resilience. Own your power, because when you own your power, when we lead, we do it for us, but we do it for everyone else to build. Finally, I want to leave you with a poem. When I was in college and trying to discover my being, I wrote a poem. People kept telling me, oh, life is just in the mind. Don't worry about it. It's a mind game. It's a mind game. So these words came to my spirit. They say it's all in the mind. These trying times we undergo, so many things we must know to become a better person. Trying to understand and prove that we can, but there are so many obstacles that we must overcome. We must be as one. But most importantly, we must succeed because there are those who are just waiting for our defeat, waiting for us to fail and slip right into hell, becoming eternal. They say it's all in the mind, these trying times we undergo. So many, many things we must know to move over to the other side. Struggling to survive and never losing our pride, working to reach the ultimate goal, sacrificing our daily habits for a period of an undercover life, not knowing what to expect, but expecting the worst. And during these trying times, we will not settle for less in our fight to become a part of the best. Instead, we will march on strong, holding our heads up high, singing out loud with spirit and pride, determined to succeed. And during those final times when all hell breaks loose, we will survive. And when we cross the burning sands, we will understand that the mind game was only a game and realize that from the start, it wasn't in the mind, it was in the heart.
At this time, we'll have a short break for 3 minutes.
lights will go down in 1 minute. Again, house lights will go down in 1 minute. Just a reminder, all cell phones should be on silent and no movement should happen when house lights are down. Ms. Beyonce Cox is a higher educational professional who focuses on student success. Ms. Cox graduated from Langston University with a bachelor's degree and Oklahoma State University with a master's degree in educational leadership studies. Ms. Cox founded B Speaks, where she highlights the components of student success, such as mental health, student engagement and leadership, and the importance of functional areas. Ms. Cox believes that success is a mindset, and helping students be successful matters. Ms. Cox values leadership, accountability, and teamwork. Being a leader means pouring into others and bringing them along for the journey. Ms. Cox aspires to obtain her PhD and become a Vice President of Student Affairs at an HBCU. With accomplishing this goal, Ms. Cox hopes to leave a positive impact on her students and community. Please welcome Ms. Beyonce Cox to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. I am thrilled to be here this evening to talk about a topic that touches us all, leadership. More specifically, transcendent leadership. A leadership style that starts within, breaks barriers, and causes impact beyond the individual. Now, this talk will not only be about leadership, but about how to build a mindset that defines success. Leadership today is no longer about titles and positions. It is about influence, vision, and the ability to create change. As leaders, we are at a unique threshold of opportunities, not only for ourselves, but for the leaders of tomorrow. One may ask, what does it mean to be a transcendent leader? Simple. It means going beyond self-interest and conventional boundaries. It means connecting deeply with yourself, others, and the larger purpose that you strive to achieve. Let's start with the core principle, your mindset. The way you perceive challenges, embrace opportunities, and react to setbacks determines your path forward. Ask yourself, are these roadblocks or are these stepping stones? And your answer will define you as a leader. A growth mindset is essential. Understand that skill, intelligence, and talent can be cultivated. When you fail, you don't lose, you learn. Every mistake brings insight, and every setback is a chance to recalibrate. Positive psychologist Carol Dweck and her colleagues gave out research that says a person with a growth mindset believes that effort leads to success. A student who may struggle with math but believes that if they study harder, will be able to pass their class demonstrates a growth mindset. True leadership emerges when your goals align with a larger purpose. Think about your core values and let them guide your decisions. When you lead with purpose, you inspire loyalty, collaboration, and relevance. Dweck's study in 1999, long ago, shows that individuals with a fixed mindset believe intelligence and talents are static traits. A student that says, I'm just not good at science, has a fixed mindset and refuses to go beyond the measures. There's a toolkit to start helping build blocks for the leaders of tomorrow. And here they are. 1, vision. Leaders see invisible things before they become visible. What does your future look like? Begin defining what you want to create, not just for yourself, but for your peers, your community, and your society. 2, resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back, but transcendent leaders don't just bounce back, they bounce forward. Resilience is about not just surviving challenges, but using them to thrive. Cultivated by embracing change and reframing from opportunities and difficulties. 3, empathy. Empathy is your superpower. Listening, understanding, and valuing others' perspectives makes you relatable, trustworthy, and a people's person. People don't follow titles. They follow a connection. And lastly, collaboration. No one can change the world alone. Success lies in the synergy of diverse talents. Seek out opportunities to work with others and in teams, especially with those who think differently from you. Diversity fuels creativity and strengthens outcomes. How can you implement these principles in your everyday life? Well, here are some actionable items. 1, lead where you are. Leadership is not about waiting for the perfect time or the perfect role. Lead with a group project, organize a campus initiative, or simply just volunteer. Every experience shapes your ability to influence and inspire others. 2, practice self-reflection. Take 10 minutes every day to ask yourself, what could I have done well? What can I do differently? And what can I improve? These habits of introspection build self-awareness and a comprehensive way of leadership. And lastly, seek mentorship. Find someone who embodies the leadership qualities that you aspire to have. Learn from their journey, and when the time comes, pay it forward and mentor others. Here's the most important part. You have the tools to start your leadership journey right now. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for the right time. Success isn't something that happens to you. It is something that you create. Define your vision, build your resilience, and lead with empathy, collaborating with purpose. You are the leaders of tomorrow, and the foundation that you lay today will determine the impact that you create. Transcendent leadership is within reach for each and every one of you, but it starts with a mindset shift. In closing, I will leave you with this thought. The world doesn't need more leaders. We need better ones. Leaders who are self-aware, purpose-driven, and committed to lifting others as they climb. Success is a mindset, and leadership is a practice. Start building it today, and you'll transform not only your future, but the futures of everyone that you touch. Thank you.
Superintendent Angela Jones-Fitzpatrick has been married to her husband Curtis since August 2001. Together, they have 4 children and a son-in-law, Ariel, Taylor, Jalen, Cameron, and Jaden, with 4 of them being Wiley University graduates. She is a grandmother to 2 delightful grandsons who affectionately call her Lolly, while her husband is known as Pops. She is an alumna of Wiley University and Laterno University, and she is currently pursuing her doctorate at Liberty University. Alongside these cherished personal roles, Angela has the honor of serving as the superintendent of Karnak Independent School District. In this role, she is committed to fostering academic excellence, supporting local families, and making a positive impact on the community, all while shaping the future of the district's scholars. Beyond her professional role, Angela is a servant leader who values the importance of leadership in nurturing both educational excellence and community development. Angela's influence extends beyond the school district. As the president of the New Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, she is actively involved in community service and empowerment initiatives across East Texas. Her leadership, both in and out of the educational sphere, exemplifies her commitment to lifelong learning, servant leadership, and community enrichment. Please welcome Superintendent Angela Jones-Fitzpatrick to the stage.
Imagine a small rural district where challenges are abundant, but so are the opportunities to transform lives. At Karnak ISD, we don't just lead, we transcend, redefining what it means to cultivate a success in public education through innovation, resilience, and a deep commitment to every student's potential. This evening, I want to share insights on transcending leadership in public school education from a Karnak ISD perspective. Transcendent leadership is a concept that is not just about leading, but about inspiring and empowering others to achieve beyond what they believe is possible. At Karnak, the leadership style has been pivotal in driving our mission and shaping our community. This form of leadership emphasizes empathy, ethical values, and a focus on the greater good. Karnak, we are Karnak. Karnak ISD's mission and vision. Our mission is clear: to prepare our students not just for academic success, but for life. Our vision is to navigate success from pre-K to 8th grade, ensuring that each student is prepared for the challenges of tomorrow. We are committed to cultivating lifelong learners, innovative thinkers, and responsible citizens. Our goals are centered on enhancing student achievement, embracing technology, and nurturing a culture of continuous improvement. You see, we believe that education is the cornerstone of community development. And through transcendent leadership, we aim to build a brighter future for not just one, but for all. As we honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man whose leadership transcended his time, inspiring generations to dream, act, and create a better future. Dr. King's leadership was transcendent because it was rooted in a vision far greater than himself. He said, "Faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase." You see, this profound statement reminds us that leadership is not merely about navigating the challenges of today, but about envisioning and working towards a brighter tomorrow. The limitations of his era, they didn't confine Dr. King's dream of a just and equitable society. You see, instead, it was fueled by an unshakable belief and in the dignity and worth of every individual. As educators, we are entrusted with shaping the next generation of leaders. So I invite you to consider how we, as parents, Educators, community members, and business leaders can leverage the tools to transform our schools and empower our future leaders. How transcendent leadership transform Karnak ISD? Number one, empowering educators. We invest in our teachers by providing them professional development opportunities and the support they need to innovate in the classroom. By fostering a culture of continuous learning, we empower educators to be leaders in their own right. Number two, student-centered learning. Our approach places students at the heart of everything that we do. Through personalized learning and the integration of technology, we cater to individual needs, ensuring each student can reach their full potential. Number three, community engagement. Transcending leadership isn't confined to the walls of our schools. At Karnak ISD, we actively engage with the community, involving parents and local organizations and the community in our educational journey. This collaboration strengthens our ties and ensures that our schools reflect the values and aspirations of our community. Number four, innovation and adaptability. In today's fast-paced world, adaptability is the key. Transcendent leadership at Karnak ISD means staying ahead of educational trends and integrating innovative practices. From incorporating AI in the classroom to focusing in on the social, emotional learning, we are preparing for the future. Number five, ethical leadership. At the core of transcendent leadership is the commitment to ethical decision-making. We lead with integrity, ensuring that every policy and practice at Karnak ISD aligns with our values of fairness, respect, and accountability. And that leads us to the impact on the community, the ripple. The ripple effect of transcendent leadership is profound. By focusing on holistic development, Karnak ISD not only nurtures scholars, but also contributes to the well-being of our entire community. Our schools are more than places of learning. They are hubs of inspiration and growth. Transcendent learning in public school education is about more than just achieving an academic success. It's about creating a legacy of empowerment and positive change. Let us continue to honor Dr. King's legacy by committing ourselves to the principles of transcendent leadership. Let us be visionaries in our aspirations, courageous in our actions, and steadfast in our beliefs that we can create a brighter future for all. As Dr. King so eloquently stated, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Together, let us be that force that bends that arc, ensuring that his dream lives in our hearts, our schools, and definitely our communities. At Karnak ISD, we are committed to leading with purpose as a passion, ensuring that our scholars, educators, and our community members all rise together because we are Karnak. Thank you.
Dr. Dr. JoAnn Scales' connection to the theme of transcendental leadership is evident in her visionary approach to education and leadership development. She has spearheaded initiatives that transcend traditional educational boundaries, such as enhancing retention through data-driven strategies, launching interdisciplinary programs, and promoting diversity in STEM fields. Her leadership philosophy integrates the principles of growth, innovation, and collaboration, fostering environments where students and faculty alike are empowered to achieve their highest potential. Dr. JoAnn Scales is a seasoned higher education leader with over 2 decades of experience in academic administration, student success, and innovative teaching practices. As the Associate Provost of Academic Affairs at Wiley University, Dr. Scales oversees academic program development, faculty initiatives, and strategic retention efforts. Her visionary leadership has contributed to the implementation of high-impact practices and data-driven strategies that enhance student outcomes and institutional excellence. A passionate advocate for lifelong learning, Dr. Scales is deeply committed to mentoring faculty and students, empowering them to reach their fullest potential. She frequently presents at national conferences, sharing insights on immediacy in leadership, predictive modeling for student success, and the future of higher education. Please welcome Dr. JoAnn Scales to the stage.
We hear a lot about different types of leadership styles and what makes leadership effective. Leadership is not just about giving directions or setting goals. It's about creating connections that inspire and ignite action. One way to bridge those positive connections is through the use of immediacy behaviors. As we dive into the powerful concept of immediacy in leadership, or the ability to create deep, authentic connections that transform relationships and drive impact, I want to explore with you the science, strategies, and practices that make this possible. As a child, I often found myself stepping into the role of caregiver or problem solver, even before I fully understood what leadership meant. One moment stands out vividly in my mind. In elementary school, there was a younger boy in our neighborhood named Jamie. Jamie was a shy kid, often excluded by others because he had trouble keeping up during games. One summer day, as a group of us played tag, I noticed Jamie sitting on the edge of the park bench, looking down at his sneakers, clearly wanting to join, but too nervous to ask. I remember thinking, someone has to include him. Without hesitation, I walked over, sat beside him, and started a conversation. After a few minutes, I asked if he wanted to play. When he hesitated, I offered to create a game we could all enjoy together. I suggested a relay race where everyone had a role, no matter the speed or skill. Luckily, the other kids loved the idea, and for the first time, Jamie was a part of the group, laughing and running alongside everyone else. I stayed close to him, cheering him on, and making sure he felt encouraged. From that day on, Jamie wasn't just the shy kid on the edge of the park bench. He was an active part of our little community. See, this small act of inclusion felt natural to me as a child. But looking back, I see it as an early sign of my desire to lead with empathy and care. Leadership isn't just about giving directions. It's about recognizing who needs a helping hand, a voice, or a little confidence to shine. That day taught me that the greatest impact often come from the simplest acts of kindness. This desire to help others has stayed with me, shaping the way that I lead today. Always looking for ways to uplift, include, and create spaces where everyone can thrive. See, I learned a powerful lesson that day in elementary school. I learned the power of a single connection. Leadership is often seen as this grand endeavor, but its true power lies in the simplest moments of a single connection that can transform a relationship, a team, or even a life. I remember a time when a colleague struggling with self-doubt approached me after a team meeting. They had hesitated to share an idea that could have added immense value to our discussion. Instead of moving on, ignoring their feelings, I made it a point to sit with them, listen deeply, and affirm their perspective. I asked them to share their thoughts privately, and as they spoke, I could see their confidence grow. The next week, during a similar meeting, I gently encouraged them to share their ideas with the team. They did, and it was overwhelmingly positive. Not only did their contribution solve a pressing challenge, but it also marked a turning point for them as they became a more active and confident voice in our leadership group. This experience reinforced a powerful truth. Leadership is about creating moments of trust and affirmation that unlock the potential in others. A single connection rooted in empathy and authenticity can change the trajectory of someone's journey and strengthen the bonds that drive collective success. This is immediacy in action. A sense of immediacy in leadership encourages psychological closeness, or a desire to build closeness through verbal or even nonverbal behaviors. Using immediacy, a leader can turn a crisis into a unifying moment simply by being on the front lines with their team. Immediacy fosters trust, the very foundation of any effective team. Imagine a workplace where people felt safe to share ideas, ask questions, and take risks. That's the power of immediacy, and it drives measurable results. Now, don't get me wrong, immediacy is not just about being present. It's being profoundly attuned to the needs, emotions, and context of those you lead. In the workplace, immediacy in leadership looks like offering support to a teammate, showing genuine concern or care for their well-being, mental health, as well as their productivity. It looks like using open communication and active listening to foster trust and connection. It also looks like following up to show genuine concern. Now, there's a science to this. Science backs what great leaders intuitively know. Connections matter. The connection hormone, oxytocin, also aids in strengthening bonds. Once trust is built, teams feel psychologically safe, protected, and willing to do their best work. Strong workplace connections enhance collaboration and team cohesion. It drives engagement as well as productivity. Literature shows that in the workplace, a workplace with high trust levels can see a 74% decrease in stress among its employees and a 50% increase in productivity. Again, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. It's a choice. In the childhood memory I shared previously, I chose to be inclusive, to make an impact on someone else. In order to make a positive impact on someone else that attracts them enough to follow you, leaders should focus on transcending themselves into better leaders. This idea of transcendent leadership is about rising above your own interest for the best interest of others, being purpose-centered, internally driven, and outward serving. In the book, Discover Your True North by Bill George, the author discovers that the hardest person you will ever lead is yourself. And just like anything in life, there's challenges to overcome when displaying immediacy in leadership. Barriers like time constraints, emotional fatigue, and even the fear of vulnerability. But by prioritizing relationships, taking care of ourselves, we can overcome those challenges. Immediacy doesn't just stop with one single connection, though. It spreads like a ripple effect. Transformative connections will begin to radiate throughout the entire organization. Leaders who model immediacy inspires others to adopt similar behaviors, creating a culture of trust and engagement. The power of immediacy lies in its ability to make others feel safe, seen, heard, and valued in every present moment. Every interaction is an opportunity to lead with this form of trust and closeness. So I leave you with this final question. How will you seize every moment to lead?
We will now have a 1-minute break. I repeat, we will now have a 1-minute break. Thirty seconds. 30 seconds until house lights are down. Mr. Rush Harris is the Executive Director of Marshall Economic Development and has been a rural economic developer since 2011. He collaborates with various stakeholders to strengthen community foundations and stimulate the private sector through strategic investments. Harris is active in numerous committees and boards related to the economic, workforce, and community development, as well as transportation, education, and land and water use. He holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Southern Methodist University and an MBA from Thunderbird School of Global Management. Harris also completed the Economic Development Institute at the University of Oklahoma and is a certified economic developer. He has worked in diverse industries and volunteered with the United States Peace Corps in Guatemala from 2002 to 2004 and is fluent in Spanish. Harris is a member of the International Economic Development Council, the Texas Economic Development Council, and the Texas Economic Development Corporation. In 2022, he was named Citizen of the Year by the local Chamber of Commerce. He lives in Marshall, Texas with his wife, Denora, and 2 children. Please welcome Mr. Rush Harris to the stage.
Hello, thank you very much. Again, my name is Rush Harris. I'm the Director of Economic Development for Marshall Economic Development. It's a pleasure to be here today. Economic development can mean a lot of different things to people. To me, it means I work with people to create more opportunities. And the second part of that is I work with people to move more people closer to those opportunities. The key is I work with other people. And when I say I work with others, I mean I work with everybody. I work with businesses, industries, educators, all demographics, all ages, from pre-K to college. I'm a problem solver and a facilitator. I connect people to solutions. It's very challenging, but I love it. So the hard part about that job, though, is while I have to do these things, I have no real authority over any of these people. I have to use influence. Everything I do must be from influence. So influencing others in a positive direction seems like a natural thing we want to do. But knowing how to do it effectively takes a mindset. It takes practice. There isn't necessarily any training, but it's the experience. It's the journey, the repeated journey. So transcendental leaders, in my opinion, I believe, continually practice and hone 3 fundamental traits or skills. I emphasize lifestyle because they're never done honing them. You're never done. The actions or traits that I'm going to talk about are 1, know yourself, 2, know others, and 3, be determined. That's pretty simple. So first, know yourself. This is basically self-awareness. I'll tell you a little story about where I discovered that. The toughest job I ever loved was in the United States Peace Corps. I served for 2 years in rural Guatemala in a marketing program. I lived in the Guatemalan desert, the middle of nowhere, 3 hours away from the nearest English speaker. It was difficult. I was given an assignment, a bicycle, a gas stove, and they paid me $235 a month for me to live on. So it was truly a huge test. Life-changing down to my core values to spend these 2 years in this environment teaching and training. My job was to train others, not do the work, which is even harder. The difficulties were immense from speaking the language. I did all my training, taught them in Spanish, and just being different in the culture. It didn't help that I was constantly sick from illness through this whole time. That added additional stress. It could be very lonely and defeating. So this was 2002, so a long time ago. This was, this was before social media. I didn't have a phone. Well, no, I had a cell phone, but it was the size of a brick. I could use it for emergencies. We didn't have TV. The water would go out. The electricity would go out for days. So it was difficult. But I did have this hammock. Like I had this hammock set out in the shade. And this hammock, I loved it. I found myself there often in my free time. Whether I was just sitting there relaxing, reading, thinking, praying, I often asked myself, why in the world am I out here in Guatemala? Why am I doing this? But away from the distractions, I never had so much time to self-reflect, to think to myself about what was important to me. I mean, here in my hammock, there was no preconceptions, there were no judgments. There were no pending emergencies, no deadlines, no family obligations. I began the practice of reflecting, looking inward, and maintaining a journal. I did this daily practice for 2 years. I was literally having my desert experience, out in the desert experience, right? Looking inwardly, determining what was the meaning of my existence and what was my purpose. This was my first real chance to really think about myself in a holistic way, spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally. I continue to do this. It's a lot harder now, right? You have all these distractions. You have phones, you have TV, you have obligations. It's tough to do, but you have to find that refuge. You have to find that sanctuary for yourself. You have to practice self-awareness to know yourself. Point number 2, know others. So this is empathy, right? My job now as an economic developer requires me to speak to a variety of audiences and to know roughly what their reaction is going to be, to know what their goals are, to know what is going to be their reaction, what's their motivation, what are their goals. The more I learn about people, the more I know that there's a lot more for me to learn. So we're all different. We see the world through our own unique colored lens, brought on by nature and nurture. Good leaders, understand that we're different and we capitalize on these differences. We use these differences to make the whole stronger. I'm able to succeed in my job when diverse people open their hearts and their minds to goals that benefit humanity. That's all of us, big picture. So Marshall is not the Marshall of 100 years ago or 50 years ago or even 20 years ago. Our makeup is the most diverse it has ever been in our history. And our challenges right now are as great as they have ever been. If we expect to find the most positive outcomes for this community, and that's my job, is to work on the most positive outcomes, that requires an empathetic and inclusive approach to problem resolution and communication. We have to bring in the diversity that composes this entire community. We have to understand each other. We have to be able to get to know each other. There are far too many leaders right now who are not empathetic. We have those who are short-sighted, who are politically expedient. They're just looking for a short-term solution. And at worst, they're self-centered. Humility seems to be a fading virtue. If you choose leadership, if you want to be a transcendental leader, you have to pick what kind of leader you're going to be. What is going to be your end objective? Who are you going to serve? What is going to be your goal? Point 3, and this is the longest skill to try to develop, it's be determined. All right, this is resoluteness. Are you going to be in it for the long haul? So you know yourself, you know others, now you got to work on to be determined. To even possibly be successful, even possibly for the time that you have to put in the time for this, right? Changing hearts and minds is not an easy task. It is not a short-term endeavor. It takes honesty, humility, longevity, and acknowledging the myriad of viewpoints that exist in the cultures that we share in this community. Changing culture literally takes years. Over a decade ago, I've been doing this for over a decade now, it was pretty clear that we had an assortment of issues in Marshall, with education being one of the primary issues. You know, a town with 4 colleges should have higher educational attainment, right? You've got the resource right at our disposal. But we weren't. Our town did not. And this was affecting business, it was affecting government, it was affecting leadership succession, housing, the whole gamut, right? Siloed leadership also was very limited in the approach that they could do. This is before. So I couldn't shake the idea that education is a theme that rises all boats, right? It rolls in, it lifts us all. Emerging pockets from the community believe this as well. Over a series of years, my understanding of education and everything that goes into it, which is a lot, got better. And I started to engage with those folks more, these pockets that wanted education. And we worked together, we celebrated victories, we consoled each other on defeats, we regrouped after failures, and we weathered the storm of transient leadership. It required me to rethink changes and make changes in myself and my organization. Education was placed at the forefront of our agenda, not the back end, the forefront. Educational advancement, community partnerships, and unity of leadership was our focus. I was applauded by some and criticized by others. I realistically controlled none of it, but I had influence in all of it. But it's not about me or my role. It's about mobilizing external leaders. It's about getting these voices to help the cause. It's about a message that started with just a few people and then moved to tens of people. And now 14 years later, there are hundreds of people supporting this educational push for our community. And it expands well beyond just my organization. It's in business, it's in government, it's in the community, it's in civic leadership. We're all trying to work hard to make things better in education. Again, it wasn't just me. I just kept engaging. I kept participating. I kept pushing the issue. I kept poking the button, right? Changes take time. Change takes people. Sustainable change takes purpose. If you're up for leading the transformation of culture and converting reticent people, you better be up for patience. You better be up for failure, hardship, regrouping, reevaluating, restarting, because it's not easy. You better be determined. It's easy to quit. It's easy to blame others. It's easy to say, my efforts don't make a hill of beans. I'm not important at all. What can I do? Leading change is hard, and it always will be. You have to ask yourself if you're up for it. I often do. Practice resoluteness. Be determined. Transcendental leadership is a lifestyle. Again, you're never done knowing yourself, knowing others, and being determined. You live, sleep, eat, and breathe that as a leader. I sometimes think about where I would be had I listened to a lot of people who said, you're never going to change anything in Marshall. I think about, what if I just moved on to something else? Where would I be? The answer is, I have no idea. I have no idea what would have happened had I done that. But what I can tell you is, because I stayed, I'm part of the solution. I'm part of the change that's happening right now. I've stayed the course. Things are changing. Systems are changing. Our local culture is changing. Now, we still agree to disagree about a lot of things. But we come back and we talk to each other about the big picture, about what's important. To those of you who want to make a difference, I challenge you to start with the first step. Know yourself. Get to know yourself. Take some time. Reflect. While you're doing that, learn about others. Spend time with others. Think about what really makes them tick. Doing one thing leads to the other. Seek out the unknown. Try the uncertain. Find that person you don't know about. Learn more about them. It's a skill set. You're developing it. And that determination will come with time. The more you believe in what you're doing, the more resolute you will be. Be sure to share your experience, share your journey with others. I leave you this. When we share truthfully with each other, we're able to build trust. When we build trust, we're able to build and develop relationships. When we develop relationships, we're able to understand. When we understand, we're able to influence. And when we influence, we're able to change our collective destiny. What kind of leader will you be? It all starts with you. Thank you.
Dana Michelle Fergin brings over 20 years of experience in leadership development, higher education, and history education. Ms. Fergin uses her extensive leadership development training and planning skills to ensure high-quality professional programs and efficient research-based practices for all stakeholders and institutions. Dana Michelle Fergin provides educators and professionals with effective research-based strategies for growth mindset, networking, personal development, professional development, and leadership development. Ms. Fergin currently serves as an education lecturer, history lecturer, leadership development trainer, and conference speaker. Time and time again, she has made a difference during her distinguished career in student success, professional development, leadership development training, motivational and transformational speaking, and conference presentations. A two-time graduate of the Louisiana State University of Shreveport, where she earned a bachelor's and master's degree, Ms. Fergin also holds a master's degree in history from Louisiana Tech University. She has certifications in history, principal, supervisor of student teaching, and leadership training. Ms. Fergin has received recognition for her extraordinary career, her steadfast dedication to furthering equitable education, her tireless advocacy for education and children, and her passionate support of women and youth. Two-time Teacher of the Year awardee, she currently serves as Board of Director for Lupus Foundation of America, Lone Star Chapter. She recently served as chairwoman of the Junior League of Collin County Adaptive Leadership Training Committee, and she is a proud member of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. She was recently awarded Master Presenter at the NISOD International on Teaching and Leadership Excellence. Former positions that have given Ms. Fergin's experience with organizational leadership and management are teaching or training as an adjunct professor, subject matter expert, teaching or training as a master teacher, an invited lecturer or workshop facilitator on issues of networking, effective communication, growth mindset, implicit bias, equitable education, equity, inclusion and diversity at multiple conferences, corporations, and nonprofits. Please welcome Ms. Dana Fergin to the stage.
Dr. King was a model of transcendent leadership in action. Transcendent leadership in action that contributed to much larger, such as the community, organization, and social change through movement. But guess what? For us to truly impact, we must lead in a way like Dr. King that transcends traditional notions of leadership. Because it's not about your title, it's not about your accomplishments, it's about cultivating leadership grounded in self-awareness, service, and a profound commitment to being and not doing. Transcendent leadership in action emphasizes that our leadership must reflect our collective value and interconnectedness. Transcendent leadership in action emphasizes that leadership must reflect and have belief that begins within. Now, there is heart to transcendent relationships and leadership. You must think of leadership as not just being focused on external actions, such as setting goals, solving problems, and driving results, but transcendent leadership that begins with self-reflection and internalization of asking yourself, who am I when no one is watching? How do my judgments shape my decisions? And how am I leading? Is it from a place of grace or a place of habit? Transcendent leadership in action teaches us that self-reflection is not just self-indulgence. It is impactful leadership built on the foundation of looking inward and making sure that you dismantle judgment. When we lead from a place of inner wisdom, something remarkable happens. We create an environment where people feel valued, people feel empowered, because transcendent leadership in action becomes a guiding principle that transforms our interactions and strengthens our very own community. Now, transcendent leadership has to have servant leaders, and transcendent leaders know that they must serve first. They ask, how can I uplift others, rather than what's in it for me? And through the service, it requires humility and the courage to put ego aside and the willingness to focus on others' growth and well-being. Because transcendent leadership in action reminds us that not only do we have to uplift others, but we can only do that to elevate ourselves. Transcendent leaders know not only to listen, but they also know to give respect. A transcendent leader's most powerful tool isn't their voice, it's their ability to listen. And I don't mean just listening, I mean listening to understand. Not listening to respond, listening to understand. Because true listening fosters respect, and the respect is a bedrock of trust in a culture that can be practiced and valued and contributed to recognize others. Transcendent leaders also have courage and resilience. There is grace, but there is grace that is not weakness, as some may see. Grace is strength under control. And it's not about navigating difficult moments with composure and treating everyone as if you oppose them. You treat everyone the same with dignity. Can you imagine if you oppose someone and just treating them with dignity? But I want to say this. This is something that I really love. President Felton of the Wiley University often speaks of refinement. And I love that term because refinement is the continual process. It is the continual process of learning and improving, and not just because we're flawed, but because we're capable of being better. Transcendent leadership and action encourage us to refine our leadership and uplift one another that removes all habits. Now let's address the elephant in the room, and I'm not talking about the deltas. I'm talking about the elephant in the room. That elephant in the room of habitual leadership behaviors. We've all been there. You know those behaviors where things have always been done this way or a certain person can only do them? We have to get out of our comfort zones. We have to know that there is no comfort, there's no innovation, there's no growth if you have the continuous same cycles. That's why transcendent leaders dare to be audacious, to question entrenched beliefs, and to ask, what if we can do something differently? What if we can lead with more heart and less judgment? Because in transcendent leadership and action, it challenges us to break free from the status quo and embrace transformative change. The key to this is to shift from reacting and shift to responding with impactful intentionality. And this requires self-reflection. This requires the willingness to look beyond and to imagine what could be. Because transcendent leadership practices empowerment through appreciation. One of the most powerful ways to lead is through appreciation. When was the last time you paused and recognized the strengths and contributions of those that are around you? Appreciation can be the fuel for empowerment. It tells people that they matter, their work matters, and that we matter together. Imagine an organization where individuals feel seen, where every individual feels valued, and it's a meaningful environment where everyone can thrive. Transcendent leadership in action serves as a foundation for a culture of appreciation, recognition, and empowerment. It's a state of grace where people can grow and understand and collaborate and flourish. It is an antidote to judgment, but it's what leads us to be a force to be reckoned with and a force to influence. Transcendent leadership in action embodies the essence of grace. It allows us to value and be interconnected through self-awareness, through service, and profound being in leadership. But I want to stop for a minute and say this. Transcendent leaders also have to have what we call leadership in action that's transformative, but they have to know that in the state of grace of doing this essence of grace and doing this state of being, that they have to be bold and audacious in their commitment for self-reflection. They also have to know that it's not about being perfect, it's about being present. Because when you lead from the space of authenticity, you create something extraordinary, an environment where everyone can come together and thrive. Because the ultimate goal is to have a community where servant leaders are built. Transcendent leaders know not to seek followers, but to cultivate leaders. And lastly, through transcendent leadership in action, we build communities where leadership is not about personal gain, but about uplifting others. And when we embrace the mindset, we don't just lead, we transform, we inspire, and we leave a meaningful, transformative legacy. Thank you.
Mr. Allan R. Loudermilk is an investor, electrical engineer, inventor, and licensed patent attorney. Originally from Indiana, Allan made his way to Marshall, Texas by way of Chicago and Cupertino, California. He visited Marshall in 2009 for a patent court case and fell in love with Marshall and its rich history. He renovated the old Coca-Cola building in Marshall and moved his business incubator and patent law practices there in 2010. He helps large global companies, startups, and individual inventors protect and get value from their inventions. He has co-founded numerous startups and is an investor on over 100 patents. More recently, he led the renovation of the historic Ginocchio Hotel, and the Ginocchio restaurant is now in operation in its 8th year of operation. He is a founder and CEO of M-Life Diagnostics, LLC, a leader in oral fluids-based healthcare testing, which partnered with Wiley during COVID to test students and faculty. He is the founder of Boogie Woogie Corporation, a Texas nonprofit with a mission of celebrating boogie woogie music and its influences by way of performances and education. He has a Juris Doctorate from Indiana University, a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering from Stanford University, and a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Purdue University. Please welcome Mr. Allan Loudermilk to the stage.
It's one of the first things I've ever been early to my entrance on stage. As I was preparing my remarks, I started looking up the word transcendent, and I realized maybe I'm not the right person here. I'm just an ordinary boy from Indiana, and I'm going to tell my story. But I feel like I should start by thanking Wiley for allowing me to be here. It's so great to hear these inspiring words of these speakers honoring Dr. King, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it. I'm not a believer in making a grand plan and then just stick with it and staying on that steady course. And nothing wrong with that, but I think for many of us, life takes many twists and turns. There are many experiences you'll have that might change your direction. So I often say, as you go through life, look ahead and remember your ABCs. Actually, remember your ABCDs. Always be connecting the dots. Look ahead, see what's happening, and imagine how things might be based upon what you're experiencing. You could be open to a change in direction if you're looking ahead, and just connect those dots to make something better or improved. So this is a story of how an Indiana boy ends up in Marshall, Texas, and perhaps leadership by doing stuff. My father had no opportunity for college, and he worked at the power plant and worked his way up. So he got me interested in electricity. He would bring electric wire and batteries and motors home, and I would just tinker with them. So that got me involved and excited about electrical engineering. So I started out studying engineering, became an engineer, and went to Bell Laboratories, where I was an engineer for a number of years. But I got interested in seeing how people worked with new ideas and say, how can we make products, how can we make businesses, and take that idea and make something better. So I decided the dots for me were take that idea and make something of it, and how can I help people do that? So I decided to go to law school and focus on becoming a patent and trademark lawyer. So So I got experience at large firms, and I decided that what I was really excited about were small companies and individual inventors who came up with new ideas. And so I wanted to try to help them do something with their ideas. I thought California would be the right place to do this, so I started there, and I helped launch a number of companies. We helped them get their patents. Things were looking good. Then the internet bubble burst. The dots started moving around. These companies couldn't raise money, they couldn't go public, they were stuck. But I had helped them get these patents, and I said, we're gonna help you do something with these patents. We worked hard to get them, let's do something. Turned out the best place on the planet to get value from patents was Marshall, Texas. The dots connected and rearranged, so I came to Marshall, Texas. First time I visited was 2009, had a trip to the courthouse, learned about how the procedures here worked, and the courts here worked fast and efficient. And I was impressed by the courts, and also as I drove around the historic buildings here in downtown Marshall. The history just captivated me, but I was also sad because there were so many buildings that were abandoned or neglected and weren't properly honored in many ways. I was drawn to the Coke building, ended up buying that in 2010. I imagined the people working inside and the kids seeing the Coke bottles twirl around. So I decided that the Coke building would be a place where I could come and offer more services to my clients. And so this glorious building, we were able to get it restored and open, and it really helped North Washington Avenue. And so I think it helped the neighborhood to see this building come back. With the Coke building, I now had a place to offer more services for people to come in and help with their ideas to develop and manufacture products. I had a place for clients to help them start a business. I had a place where I could tinker and tear stuff apart. I had a place where I could help people do something with their ideas. And I also made a place where I could sleep at night. So Marshall is my home. And so the dots are I now have a resource that I can use to do other things. So I was in Marshall working at the Coke building, helping people with their inventions, and just up the road near the beautiful depot was an old abandoned hotel, the Ginocchio. It was a glorious hotel back in the day, but it had been run down, and it was this beautiful historic building right by the railroad tracks. I love trains, always have. I also love the history, and Marshall's a railroad town. So I tended to help take over this building with partners to open a restaurant. The partnership didn't work out. Again, I'm an engineer and a lawyer, not a restaurateur. So I ended up with a half-finished building and no idea what I was going to do. The dots were not lining up for me right then. I had to decide, stop, sell, move on. We just, for prayer and reflection, we're going to move forward. We're going to keep trying. So I was convinced that we could make a fine dining restaurant work in Marshall. Chance of success were low, I was told, but here we go. We're going to go forward. I found a chef in Chef Ronaldo, and we decided to move forward. So we opened our doors in November of 17. We have been open now in our 8th year. We have 25 employees, and we're serving clientele from all over. But it's an example of seeing this, seeing how the dots could align and we could make it happen. I'm a big believer in leading by example, and of course, if you come to the restaurant, you'll see me bussing tables or whatever needs to be done. We all pitch in, we're a team, and I'm proud of what the team does there. I later invested in a startup medical device company called MLife Diagnostics. It didn't quite work out as planned. I was supposed to be a passive investor, but it turned out an issue came up, and so we again faced a choice. What do? Lose our investment or take it over? So rather than to let it slip aside, we decided we would take it over, and we moved it to Marshall. And we set it up in the Coke building, and I had that resource that I had came up with earlier. So in 2009, we started focusing on drug testing, and then early in 2020, what happened? We had the crisis of COVID. Things can be arranged again. What do? We stay on our current path. We were not going to succeed. So we switched into helping with the COVID testing needs of the community. So against pretty steep odds, a little tiny company in Marshall got the FDA authorization for our COVID test based upon oral swabs, and we were able to set up testing sites. And I'm proud to say that Wiley helped us launch that. And we were able to test students here at ETBU. We had a testing site at the Coke building. And in Austin, we set up and tested students on, young children, particularly young students, on Sunday evening, and they would have their test by Monday morning. So yeah, special shout out to Wiley for helping us pull that off. But it was an example of the things changed. We had to react, connect the dots differently. So there are a few other dots to be discussed in my Marshall story. Shortly after I arrived in Marshall, there was a doctor, piano player, and a historian named John Tennyson. And he had been researching, he loved boogie woogie music, and started studying where did boogie woogie music originate. His findings indicated that it started in this area. In the 1870s, the recently emancipated African Americans would work hard during the day. They would go to the barrel houses. They had a piano to entertain themselves. Not being classically trained in how to play it, they improvised. They created their own way of playing it. With that rhythmic sound of the locomotives, they came up with a fast left-handed bass that really was inspiring body movement and dance. So it's kind of fascinating. The very railroad tracks where the Ginocchio is 150 years ago is what inspired boogie woogie. It's just hard. It's one of those things that the dots and the coincidence are hard to imagine how those could line up. But the very tracks next to the restaurant where 150 years ago those workers were building it came up with boogie woogie. And without boogie woogie, we do not have rock and roll. So here's the dots connecting with me being a trademark lawyer, a patent and trademark lawyer. I went home and filed trademark applications. So we developed some boogie woogie brands so that we could develop products and services around the boogie woogie concept. So you can get boogie woogie shrimp at the Ginocchio, you can get boogie woogie beer at the Rugenbach Brewery, which is licensed. And as an example of things came to me and we were able to connect the dots and grow some businesses and do some good for the community. Boogie woogie was promoted by the city for a while in a 2010 time frame, and others in the community like Jack and Nancy Canson in particular helped pursue it. But funds dried up, and so it sort of went dormant for a while. Had a musician come into the restaurant. We were just brainstorming music, and wouldn't it be great to have a Boogie Woogie Festival? And so that was the seed to start a nonprofit, Boogie Woogie Marshall, and the idea of having a festival, and it turns out the Koch building is a perfect place to have an outdoor festival behind it. So it's another example of these things that didn't seem related or how they could be connected, came about, the dots were connected, and here we are now celebrating boogie woogie music, and we hope to continue to grow that for the good of everyone. So the boogie woogie story kind of ties everything together, both the restaurant, the music history, railroad, and so we're really grateful to be able to help that. And Wiley has helped us. They performed at some of our events, and so we're so grateful for Wiley's support for what we've done with Boogie Woogie. We've also opened a museum at the Depot Museum to help educate folks on Boogie Woogie, and we hope you'll visit that sometime. So what insights can be drawn? I mean, this is more examples of getting out and doing stuff. To the extent I'm a leader, I try to do it by example and go out and do things. One lesson is if I ask you to be an investor in a venture, you may want to run, because I may end up having you help me bust the tables or mop up, because we end up taking it over even though we thought we were just going to be an investor. But that's what happens. You get out and you do things, and lead by example, again, is one of my big principles. There was uncertainty in the various choices I made in doing these things I've just talked about, and many challenges that you couldn't imagine. But you have to have faith that, all right, we're going to figure this out. We're going to make this work. And it starts, I think, by setting your values and do your best to live those values as you're going through these challenges. So you have to have faith when things aren't going your way. It's really easy to have faith when everything's going your way, but you got to have faith when you have the difficult times. The other thing is, be resilient. You've got to when you get knocked down, you got to get up. If there's one factor in life that predicts success more than any other, I believe it's resilience. Don't stop. Keep going. You get knocked down, rearrange, look what's ahead, connect the dots, and keep going. And do your best to stay positive as you go through these challenges. Don't let circumstances or unhealthy situations or relationships drag you down. A smile or a kind gesture, given or received, can brighten people's days. So Positivity is, through this process is real important. But really remember the ABCDs. Things change. Have faith. Be prepared to make a change if you see a better way to connect the dots. This can be in your business. This can be in your school. It can be in your neighborhood. Look what's happening. Go after it. Do stuff. Lead by example. Make the world a better place. Thank you.
Dr. Erica Johnson is a visionary, educator, and a champion for children. With over 2 decades of dedicated service, Dr. Johnson has reshaped schools and communities through her unwavering commitment to academic excellence, inclusivity, and the holistic empowerment of students and educators. Rising from her start as a substitute teacher to superintendent of one of Texas's largest charter management organizations, she has guided over 25 campuses, profoundly impacting thousands of students, teachers, families, and communities. Known for her whole child approach, Dr. Johnson cultivates learning environments that not only drive student achievement, but also support the growth and fulfillment of every teacher. Her leadership legacy is defined by creating resilient educators, inspired communities where every voice is uplifted, every educator is empowered, and every student is equipped to excel and make a lasting impact on the world. Please welcome to the stage, Dr. Erica Johnson.
Good evening. Imagine sitting in principal's meeting and your phone rings. Before you can answer it, you see a text message. It's 911. Call, call, call. My heart skipped a beat. What was going on at my campus? I stepped outside to take the call. The police are at the school. What? Yes, ma'am, they're here. Why are the police at my school? They saw 2 of our students on the highway. They're here. Come quick. I drove the 30 minutes to my campus to find the police were still there waiting. Again, my heart skipped a beat. What happened? What's wrong? They went on to tell me that one of my 5th grade students, along with her 3rd grade brother, decided that they would walk the 5-mile journey from their home to school. You see, it's when the police saw them on the freeway that they decided to stop and bring them to school. My first question for my students were, why would you walk so far? Their explanation was simple. I had to come to school. I have a presentation today. And Ms. Johnson, I have a test next week. I gotta be at school. Again, my heart skipped a beat. I was so proud of the dedication that these students had for their education. You see, we had always taught them that you must be responsible for your own learning. My teachers, my staff, they're here to facilitate, but you have to be responsible. And if you're here, we're gonna teach you. And they decided that no matter what, they had to be there. I wanna take you on a journey from substitute to superintendent, my journey as a transcendent leader. I'm not going to tell you all the wonderful things that we were able to accomplish as a team throughout the 25 years of my education experience, but what I am going to tell you are 7 lessons that I've learned. Some of them it took me longer than others to figure out. The first one, lead with empathy, not sympathy. Our students and our staff, they need us to believe in them, but more importantly, they need us to empathize with them. You see, they need us to continue to hold them accountable and keep our standards high, but they need us to be able to relate with the trauma and the drama that they may go through. I researched this word, empathy. What does that really mean? Time and time again, I couldn't find a definition that truly suited the impact of an empathetic leader. So what do we do as doctors? We make up our own. My definition of empathy is experiencing what others have experienced without having the experience. That's empathy. When we only practice sympathy rather than empathy, we are practicing educator malpractice. Don't do it. Lesson number 2, be present. John Maxwell made it clear. He says leadership is not about titles or positions or flow charts. It's about one life influencing another. Be present. In order to have influence on others, you must learn to build relationship with those through empathy. So I encourage you, as a leader, be present. This next one was a tough one for me to learn, but I think I finally got it. You see, what I realized, and there's a wonderful quote that I'm sure you've heard before, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't lie. You see, I had to learn how to use data differently. We saw numbers, we had spreadsheets out the wazoo, but did we really connect the numbers to the students and the human beings we were serving? So I changed the approach. I sang a new song. You see, data had to have a face under my leadership. What does that number mean? What does that number represent? Because each of those numbers, they have a face behind them. And once you learn to connect that face to that number, you decide to make your decisions a little bit differently. You all, I learned that you can't be the same leader all the time. In fact, you must adapt your leadership style. Sometimes you can be transactional. It is what it is. I said what I said, and this is what it's gonna be. There are other times when you need to be transformational. You need to use your charisma and learn how to guide those who you are leading. There's other times when you may need to share or distribute your relationship. But I will tell you this for sure, you must learn to balance between holding steady and letting go. Adapt your leadership style. Dr. Martin Luther King, he taught me this one. He says, you should build bridges, not walls. What I've learned in this education journey is that we oftentimes build walls around our organization, institution, schools in general. It's hard to let other folks in. I challenge you to rethink that. When we build bridges to our communities, the simplest way we can start to do that is simply ask for help. We see parents all the time and they say, the school never asks for anything. Or maybe we're not comfortable with all those that we may be asking. I would probe you to begin to break the walls down and truly build bridges to your community. This one is a tough one for leaders. And even though we may learn this, for some reason, we still fall into the trap. And that's hiring and keeping the right talent. You see, I truly believe that you hire people with a story. If you've ever been in a leadership position, you know what it feels like to have a vacancy, an empty position, crunch time, the time has gotten away from you, and now what will we do? I've made that mistake too. A quick hire is not always the right hire. I challenge you to hire character, because you can always train skill. Finally, the biggest lesson I've learned is to lead with urgency. You see, our children, they can't wait to learn. They don't get a second chance in 3rd grade. They get one shot. And so we as adults, we must lead with urgency. There should never be downtime, wasted time, because our children cannot wait to learn. We must act with urgency in this world we call education. For every day we delay, a child falls farther behind. I want to leave you with this. A principal, my very first principal, phenomenal young lady, taught me a lot. She modeled a lot. But she used to always say, baby, you can give without loving, but you can't love without giving. I took that to heart, and that stayed with me for a lifetime. I love what I do, so I give a lot. As a leader, you cannot love without giving. It's just not possible. So I'm going to ask you to take this journey and become a transcendent leader and be the very best that you can be, because our children, our students, they can't wait to learn. Thank you.
Our last and not least Wiley University TEDx speaker, Dr. Danielle Brooks, serves as Vice President for Enrollment Management and Strategic Retention at Wiley University. With over 15 years of service in higher education in various roles, Dr. Brooks's current leadership portfolio includes Office of Admissions and Enrollment Management and Student Transitions and Strategic Retention. Prior to Wiley, Dr. Brooks served as an Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs and Chief Diversity Officer at Jefferson Community and Technical College, Assistant Dean for Multicultural Affairs at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, Assistant Director for Student Housing at the University of Mississippi, Residence Hall Director at Clayton State University, North Carolina A&T State University, and Lipscomb University. Dr. Brooks received her Bachelor's of Science in Psychology from Tennessee State University, her Master's of Education in Education Administration and Supervision from Lipscomb University, and Doctor of Education in Post-Secondary Leadership from Western Kentucky University. Dr. Brooks's research interests are Black women in leadership and their challenges in historically Black colleges and universities. Dr. Brooks and her husband, Dr. Darius Brooks, and daughter Dylan Brooks enjoy traveling and exploring the great state of Texas. Please welcome Dr. Danielle Brooks to the stage.
So transcendent leadership is about building community with an emphasis on social good, the greater good, and an opportunity to build better, stronger. The idea of transcendent leadership is also removing the self the ego. And it offers us a chance to consider that leadership is centered in community, and it's about purpose, and that sometimes our actions don't align with our purpose, and that can impact the community you love, care about, and thrive with. As leaders, we learn together with the persons we say we care about, and sometimes the lesson is incredibly hard. As I learned about leadership principles, there are very few times when I can recall the conversation being about what to do when you make a mistake, when you're leading, or how to lead when you're in crisis, much less when you are the impetus for said crisis. Leading is a privilege, and being a transcendent leader is a privilege. I share this idea about transcendent leadership during crisis from the seat of a person who needed forgiveness, grace, and reconciliation in order to embrace what I fundamentally believe about being a transcendent leader. That is beyond your desire, because to lead in that way is your calling. Transcendent leaders live in their purpose. Therefore, when crisis happens, one has little choice to walk away. Transcendent leaderships must walk through it and learn from the crisis. This is my experience through one of the most painful professional and personal experiences of my career. And I share this because if you are truly to impact, you must be willing to reflect, name the behavior, accept responsibility, and push through to the purpose that you have been given. Now, here's what I'm learning. And I'm sure that there will be more lessons while I'm leading through this crisis. But lesson one is leadership is a mirror. The mirror of leadership doesn't just reflect your actions, it reveals the actions of those that you led. Crisis reveals the true character, yours and theirs. Your response in crisis reflects your character. How I show up in moments of crisis isn't just about me. It is about the example that I set for others while watching closely. Who are watching closely? And would I run? Would I crumble? Would I match energy? Leadership is a mirror, and it reflects your integrity, especially in the fire. Lesson two, I can't control what people think about me. However, I can acknowledge it and accept accountability, but I can't internalize it, and that's hard. If enough people are saying something, it must be true. How could I respond? Could I respond? I would respond with integrity, accountability, and faith. And lesson two led me to lesson three. Lesson three is let them. In her book, The Let Them Theory, Mel Robbins challenges readers to let them. Let them. Let them criticize, misunderstand, or try to knock you off your block. Practicing let them helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, also known as the rest and the digestive system, calming the body and the mind. When someone criticizes, misunderstands, or judges you, it can activate the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, triggering the fight, flight, or freeze response. Your body releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which can cause an increased heart rate, shallow breathing, and heightened emotional sensitivity. By choosing to focus on what matters rather than reacting to others, you lower your stress hormones, you restore balance to your system. And you see, this is the living embodiment of worrying yourself to death. If people are committed to believing the worst about you, let them. If you live for the cheers, you will die by the boos. And finally, lesson 4, I am nothing without God, and he will never put more on me than I can bear. Faith became the foundation for navigating how I let down the institution, our leadership, our students, my family, and the betrayal. Transcendent leadership is leading with grace, but it doesn't mean avoiding accountability. So I made space for difficult conversation while maintaining the vision for the institution. And I often reflected on Job chapter 13, verse 15. Though they slay me, yet I will trust him. When people try to break you, you lean on what cannot be broken, your faith and your purpose. My closing challenge to you is when the storm comes, and it will, ask yourself, will you retreat, will you react, or will you rise? Because transcendent leadership isn't about surviving the storm. It's about becoming the calm in the storm. Transcendent leadership goes beyond authority. It's about values, vision, and the courage to lead through challenges. Crisis is not where leadership goes to falter. It's where leadership is forged. So rise above. And while you're doing it, just remember, let them.
Let us do another round of applause. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight, for staying put. We got a couple of things. I would like all of our presenters to please stand one more time. Let us love on y'all for a little bit longer. Thank you. What a phenomenal job they did. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making this so special. On behalf of our president, Herman J. Felton Jr., thank you to all of our presenters, our speakers. Thank you to the audience. I just want to say some thank yous to Ms. Cassandra Johnson, who is a special assistant to the president. Who's special assistant to the president as well, who was the co-chair for this program tonight. Dr. Natalie Hill and the Mass Comm students. Can those students all stand up? I'm gonna say their names, but we had this idea that Mass Comm students could help with this program, and they have taken it over. And so I'm very excited for them. They've even asked, can we do this again? And I said, you sure can. You like how I did that? You sure can. I'd like to thank Mr. Darren Ashley and Ms. Singleton for their efforts and their hard work in making sure we have sound and all the technology. I want to thank the facilities team for their efforts. Mr. Christian Brookins. I'm going to name some students: Ms. Reality Edwards, Ms. Bailey Smith, Mr. Gabriel King, Mr. Jahad Hudson, Mr. James Calhoun, Ms. Anaya Clark, Ms. Aaliyah Adams, Ms. Jaden McDonald, Ms. Jasmine Banks. Can I have my Heman Sweat scholars please stand? They served as ushers. Give a little wave. All the Divine Nine organizations that came out and supported and helped tonight. And then I'd also like to recognize our committee members, Professor Walden, Ms. Catherine Sellers, Ms. Elizabeth Bradshaw, Mr. Darren Ashley. Y'all can sit down. Dr. Provost Kimberly McLeod, Ms. Dana Fergins, Dr. Renell King, Dr. Danielle Brooks, Mr. George Steele, Dr. Kimberly Pickens, and Dr. Gael Amazon. Give another round of applause. As we close, and excuse me, Walterius Nelson, thank you. My bad. As we get ready to, well, not get ready, we are closed. As we close, I do ask that everyone takes a minute to scan the QR code. It is a requirement as part of our agreement with TEDx that we do a survey. I ask that you complete that survey and submit it so we can be in accordance. Oh, it's the giving survey. Okay, well, you can donate too if you'd like. So this will be fun. If you donate, then I can send you the link for this. So I'll figure it out. Is there another QR code? The one that was before it on the screen? Let's see if that one's it. Let's try that one. Is this the one? Wonderful. See how we threw the little giving code in there by accident, but not, because God plays not with us. Huh? This is registration for, okay, yeah, go ahead and do that. Okay, thank you. Everybody's got it? It has like an email address or something to it? Okay, then we'll send you something. Thank you. So as you all are completing that, again, thank you all so much. Thank you all. Thank you all. Again, let's give our presenters and everyone who helped to assist tonight a round of applause. Let's give President Felton, this was his vision. He asked for it to be done again, and we, of course, do as we are expected to do, but it was a pleasure to be able to have this moment with you all. So we are excited that it will also be edited and placed on the TEDx website as well. It's currently on ours, so it's easily entertained over there. All right, if there's nothing else, we've kept you long enough. Thank you so much, and we wish you a well and good night and safely get home. Yeah.